Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Romantic Dinner with the DM.
I'm Prime, this is Arcad, and our guest for today is Lauren, aka ThatSaltyGinger. Hello!
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Oh, we are honestly just so excited. The world of tabletop role-playing games has certainly taken over our lives in a very strange and unexpected way. And one of the best parts of the day is just getting to talk about that with folks who get that experience. So very excited.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those things, you get it or you don't, right?
Mm-hmm. And so I guess to start it off, we're going to give you the floor and, give us your TTRPG, D&D sort of tabletop Tinder bio.
Oh, I used Tinder all of one time. So it would probably not be dissimilar from my Twitch channel bio. It would say shenanigans, sobs, smooches, screams, and salt. Probably. I think that wraps me up. Or it would say something like being bisexual means playing D&D and also any other game.
I love that.
Hell yeah.
That's beautiful. Yes, swipe the one that is the match. Yes.
Yes. We have no more idea about how Twitter works or Tinder works, but there's swiping involved.
You know what? We should have just done Twitter. I think we were going for the romantic dinner theme, but
maybe we'll change it up going forward. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
But so you know what? Let's start off. We really we just want to hear kind of a little bit about your history with TTRPGs, where you started, what ones really captured you, how you got into it, basically anything and everything that you think is kind of important and how they've fit into your life.
Yeah, the origin story.
Absolutely. Let's see. So in summer of 2016, I was on Tumblr and I saw some steamy fan fiction about these two characters that I had never heard of, and did a little digging and found out that they were characters from a show called Critical Role. And I was like, I don't know what that is. So I started watching it, figured out they were playing D&D, which I had only heard about a little bit, kind of always on the edges of friends who mentioned they had a friend who played or something like that. And so I binged, I think, the first 50 episodes of their first campaign that summer. I was in grad school, so anything that wasn't reading very dense text was appreciated.
For sure.
Yeah. So I got super addicted. I found a group to play with online because it was just easier for schedules, because all my fellow grad students were on the same kind of wacky schedule as I was, because it was film school. So shooting dates. Yes. So I reached out to a group on Roll20 and got accepted into that game, which I probably played for a little over a year, and posted about it on Twitter, followed some Twitch streams because I wanted to watch more content, and then got asked to join a group there on this Twitch stream. And I think that was because I was a performer. I have an acting background. So I tried it out since I knew a little bit about how to play by that point, and then have pretty much been streaming and playing ever since then. So we're like on 5 years, I think. And it's also how I met my girlfriend, Allie, was we ended up in the same streamed TTRPG show and fell in love and moved in together. And yes, that's my origin story.
I love that. And I have to ask, so the game that you met your partner through, was that on Twitch?
Yes, it was. It was
same. Oh, that's how Arcad and I met as well, was through Twitch. I'm telling you, it's the best. It's, we should ask people what their Twitch bios are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there we go. That's how we ended up with or how we ended up with Lauren's answer. That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And so, in keeping with that, when you were first introduced to this and you saw, this steamy Critical Role fanfic, or romance, or rather, was that sort of your introduction to Twitch and like that online, like kind of like gaming centric ecosystem at the same time as TTRPGs and D&D, or was that sort of separate?
Yeah, it was the same time thing for me, and I think because of that, they've always been kind of inextricably linked. My approach to tabletop for a long time was very performative, and I played in many more streamed games than I did home games, and now it's kind of evened out, which I'm very happy about.
That's the parallels. Like we're 9 minutes into recording this episode, and the parallels are already just crazy to me. Likewise, my very first D&D campaign was also on a Twitch stream, and you're right. Yeah. It's so different. It's a completely different animal than the sat around a Discord call or a table with friends.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's that pull to entertain, right? It can be such a gift, but it can also be a bit of a curse, because with Twitch chat, you want to be able to engage and laugh at their jokes and all of that as well. But then you also have to keep your story going. It's a fine line to walk. Definitely is.
Yeah. At this point, is it pretty much you really enjoy keeping kind of the mix of both?
Definitely. I think because I also work in the industry now, I'm a soon-to-be published author. I'm a full-time freelancer working mostly with Roll20 on converting modules and things to the virtual tabletop. So I still have my recurring streams. I do a lot less guesting, I guess, but I still enjoy when I get to. Since it has become work, I think it's been a little trickier to balance, especially, working from home, playing from home. But I definitely, ever since the pandemic started, home games, whether it's just me and my girlfriend, we had a long duet game that was probably the best campaign I've ever run, period. I've really valued having just like time away from performing and getting to kind of reconnect, just like in our own group.
Right.
That's amazing. And so I have to ask, is your girlfriend also kind of like a D&D or TTRPG powerhouse? Are you to the sort of role-playing power couple? Give us some background.
Well, we met and realized that we had a thing for each other when she told me that her character had a thing for my character.
I love it.
And yeah. Looking back at it now, it's pretty funny because our characters did not end up together, but we certainly have, and are very happy about that. She's great. She has been playing D&D and RPGs since she was 12.
Oh, wow.
So she's played like every edition of D&D. And she knows a ton. She's super creative. She's a great writer. And yeah, she's amazing.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, already, like as Arcad said, we're kind of at the baby beginning of the episode, but already I'm like, okay, well, I think, Lauren, we might need to have to ask you to come back for another episode. We might need to ask you to bring your girlfriend, because there's so many.
Double date.
Yes,
exactly. Yes, please.
That would be excellent. And I have to double back too. Published author and in the same realm as the TTRPGs?
Soon to be. So I have an encounter about to be published on DM's Guild for the first time that I worked on over the summer, which I'm excited about. It'll be part of an anthology, and I have a contract for a module of a system that we're going to talk about tonight, but I won't specify which one.
Okay. A little bit of mystery. Keep them guessing.
That is so exciting. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
That just sounds, honestly, you've just described, I think, probably for Arcad and I and most of the listeners, that sounds like an excellent life.
Yeah.
You know, of course, I'm sure, as with all of us, I'm sure that, you know, the job that you love inevitably is the job that brings you stress. But still, it sounds like you're at least a creative outlet that you have access to that is just, it sounds perfect for you.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. Before I've held a lot of different jobs and gigs. I mean, the film and theater industry is mostly a gig industry, but otherwise I've been a teacher. So this past year has kind of led to a new path for me, and I've been able to sustain myself on freelance work that I had pretty much, I mean, not a lot of experience with before the pandemic. So in that way, I feel like that is a positive that's come out of it all. It's given me time and space to start exploring those kinds of options.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know, was it kind of for you as well, where I know for us, it's a very similar story, actually. It was just this last summer that Arcad and I, we decided to move out of the city, and we decided to go freelance full time and try and focus on our content. And I'm actually going to do a quick digression here and also point out that earlier when we were talking about you doing the film school. Yes, listeners, you need to go check out this Twitch channel. The trailer alone was excellent. It was wonderful. Just, yes.
And you're going to giggle so much. I know I did.
It'll be in the show notes. Go follow Lauren's Twitch channel. It is incredible. But I know for us, it was it very much sort of the pandemic and everything changing and everything being brought into perspective. It gave us, it sort of realigned our, I guess, expectations and our goals for what we wanted for the future. And it kind of made sense to make a big change. And I feel that maybe that happened for a lot of people, and it pushed into a really good direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's just, I think, I guess I'm just wondering if for you felt kind of having the pandemic happen maybe gave you some freedom to decide to pursue a dream or pursue a career goal or a path that was kind of out of the norm. Because I know it gave me that for sure.
Especially because of the restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely has. It's nice to think of it as a positive when there's so much that can be seen as negative about it, and obviously that is real and valid. But I am grateful for the time it felt like, even though in other ways I'm not so much. But yeah, it's definitely pushed me to try and branch out into a field I always wanted to.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And you've been making it a resounding success just over and over, it seems like, with I'm sure even more ideas percolating around in your brain. So let's jump into some of the, believe it or not, listeners, this is a podcast about TTRPGs and D&D. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, just a scooch, just a bit. So one of the cool things that we saw when Prime reached out to you, Lauren, was that you obviously are very familiar with D&D, coming into it through Critical Role, but you've also branched out and run with other systems, lots of different ones across the years, and I know some of them more recently than others. We would love it if you would be able to just sort of talk a little bit about the things that you like, love, and dislike about some of them, and where you're sitting right now. Like, not so far as like making a tier list, but like kind of where are you feeling in relation to a lot of different TTRPGs right now?
I mean, the thing I've played most consistently throughout the time I've been playing has been D&D. It's just kind of, the big thing in the room. And because I learned it early, I just know it super well. And because of the content I've been consuming, it just kind of gets baked in. And I still play it. I enjoy playing... I enjoy a lot of things about it, especially tactical thinking in terms of like spells and feats and things like that. I actually do get a lot of joy out of the amount of crunch that it provides. It's a good amount for me. But my top RPG for a while has been Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, specifically Pulp Cthulhu, because I like to punch the eldritch horrors instead of just running away from them.
I like that. I love that in particular. Games, whether it's a video game or anything else, but games where you're stuck only running, it's if they frustrate me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think a lot of it, depends on the kinds of stories you're telling, and I love pulpy stories, two-fisted, big romance, big feelings, big action. Like, I love that kind of story, so pulp works really well for that because your investigators are heroes, and they're hardier, and they're more versatile. Call of Cthulhu also has about the amount of crunch that I like in a game, because I like to get inspired by mechanics. Like, I like to create my characters from the mechanics, and that's a lot of the time. Yeah, so I like a healthy amount of stuff there to play with, so I can get inspired.
That's awesome. Sometimes it's fascinating the way that the mechanics can inspire the stories. Like sometimes you might go in with the idea of a character first and then figure out how to sort of squish them into a role. But there's definitely a sort of like elegance of it coming from the mechanics.
It's almost like choreography.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
oh yeah.
Because you have the mechanics, and then you are kind of just going with the way that they're moving and creating something that works with them, which is really nice.
Yeah. So if you're all right with a quick little digression into one of these other systems, because I think a lot of our listeners probably have only touched D&D, right? And so some of these other systems are probably pretty alien to them, fitting, I suppose, since it's Call of Cthulhu. But where... I guess if you were to explain to someone who's maybe really familiar with D&D and wants to branch out into some of the other things, I guess what would be like one thing or a couple things, whatever comes to your mind really, about a system like Call of Cthulhu or one of the other ones that scratches an itch that D&D doesn't?
I think Call of Cthulhu... Base Cthulhu, you're playing investigators who are trying to solve a mystery that inevitably leads to powers and beings beyond human comprehension, right? You are exploring the unknown, and rules as written, you will likely go insane from it. A lot of Call of Cthulhu takes place in the 1920s and pulp in the 30s, a lot of it. But you can branch out into modern. They have gaslight versions if you want to go to the further into the past. I think for mysteries, I think Cthulhu does a good job at that, especially if you like eldritch horrors, and you definitely don't need to be into Lovecraft because he was awful to enjoy the game. I think nowadays, especially in pulp and the adventure I've been running for a while, Masks of Nyarlathotep, I think have been working to kind of remove that aspect from it as much as possible. Other games do that even better, there's a Fate game. It might just be Fate of Cthulhu. I think I was a playtester for that does that really well. And that uses the Fate system. Trail of Cthulhu is a gumshoe game that does it well too. So there are a lot of options to play in the world. I particularly enjoy the Pulp Cthulhu 7th edition for the flavor.
And what's the defining flavor? Is it just that kind of like big bombastic energy that it puts out there?
I mean, that's definitely part of it. I always think of like, those classic cliffhangers from pulp novels. Like, I don't know, the couple is going over the cliff and it looks like there's no way that they'll be able to come up, and they're being pursued by a hunting horror or something terrible, and at the last second they figure something out. So there's always that always that bit of hope in pulp.
Right.
I like that. I think that's important. It's always nice if you can have like even that glimmer, like, even if it's a horror story, or even if it's meant to be dark or meant to be something else, it's always nice to have a glimmer of hope. I think that's just
yeah. That's a recurring theme in all of my campaigns. I think, I wish I still had it. I had written up a list of like kind of DM tropes that you would fall into, and love can and will likely save the day is one of mine.
There's something like wholly pure about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just, I'm a huge horror fan, and I can get behind nihilistic horror, but I am a sucker for a happy ending, and I fight for it when I'm a player.
That's amazing.
I love that. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And so I guess that's a great question. Is it more, what do you find yourself more drawn to? Do you like the player side of the table? Do you like the game master side of the table? Or is it a mix of both?
A long time I was super on the player side. I enjoyed that side of the table. I enjoyed feeling like I was part of a team and kind of doing group improv together with some rules. Though nowadays I found that being the GM is actually less stressful on me than being a player, especially because I stream so much. Sometimes having that extra thing to do, whether it's like looking up something in the PDF or just responding to a question, actually keeps me more engaged than just being a player does.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for that reason, I mean, the duet game I was running for my girlfriend, because it was a duet game and because we needed to kind of balance out the module we were using, there were a lot of NPCs. And I found that it wasn't really an issue. I actually liked having to manage all of that a bit more than I like being on the other side of the table and just kind of worrying about myself. I kind of like the responsibility, I think.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And it's like, I firmly believe that there is very much a draw for both. And it's wonderful when you can find somebody, especially like a game master, who really has that drive for it. Because I do feel it's a lot of work to be the one running the game. But if it's a labor of love, then it's still really, really fun for everybody involved. And that just makes it a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think especially nowadays too, it's been 5 years. So there have been some ups and downs, like in my experience with tabletop role-playing games. And nowadays what I find is that when I'm in charge in some way, I can ensure that everybody is having a safe and fun experience in a way that I don't always feel as empowered as a player. So being able to be that kind of figure for other people and for myself is comforting, which is nice. It makes it easier to do this.
Yeah. Can we dig into that for a minute? Like when you like, 'cause obviously, you know, when you're with a party or a play group, let's say, the onus is on everybody to be responsible, be respectful, you know, all of that stuff. But inevitably, you know, the game master is the one who's running the campaign, and they sort of, as a result, end up running, you know, the out of campaign, the way that everybody organizes.
There's a default amount of authority, I would say, or expected maybe leadership, or yeah.
And so, you know, and in your case, you gravitate towards that because of wanting to keep people safe and sound and comfortable. And so what are some of the things and the steps that you take to ensure that your players do feel safe, whether just with standard sort of experiences, or even more so if you're dealing with hard themes in the campaign or outside of it?
Yeah, so I am a vocal proponent of safety tools. I think they're necessary for any tabletop role-playing game. I think even if you think you know someone and you've played together before, you don't know everything about a person. And it's, at the end of the day, it's a game, and people should feel safe. Like, people shouldn't be getting triggered over a game. And if they do, like, there should be tools in place to help them, not to kind of kick your way through their trauma to tell a story you want to tell. So safety tools are a big deal. My co-producer over at my Twitch channel, SaltySweetGames, is one of the co-curators of the TTRPG Safety Toolkit, which they won an NA for, Kiana Shaw at Kiana S on Twitter. So she has been super, has super deep dived into safety tools and does a lot of work with them. And so we, as part of our stream, made sure those were always implemented. So we use a couple of things. We use lines and veils. So we send out an anonymous kind of spreadsheet so people can put lines, things they don't want in the campaign at all, and they can do this anonymously. That will be respected by everyone. It's a living document. Things can be added to it at any time. And veils, things people are okay with being included, but they would just prefer to not be in detail.
Okay.
So that's like kind of the first thing we do. When I'm starting a campaign, we also kind of sit down and talk about the themes we're going to be dealing with, the tone we're going for, so the expectations, so we're all kind of on the same page. I run a lot of horror. I love horror, but I know that just because we're doing a horror campaign doesn't mean everything's suddenly on the table. So we talk about the kinds of things we want to explore. I was part of the Magpie curated play program as a professional GM for a while, and I ran a lot of Bluebeard's Bride, which is a horror PBTA powered by the apocalypse game that focuses on feminine horror and the experience of Bluebeard's Bride. And there are some, like, with that comes instances of sexism and abuse, and we talk about, like, this game is set up to explore that. What parts of that do we want to explore, and what parts of that would we rather not? So the game is always customized to the people playing it, which I think is really important. For Fear Itself, the podcast that I recently wrapped, we were dealing with the missing girl genre, right? And so there are tropes that come up with that. And so when I sent out the casting call with my co-creator Summer Matthews, we talked about like what kind of game we're running. Like, this is not about survival, really. This is not about exploring. This is not about having a fantastical adventure. This is about figuring out what happened to your missing friend, Annie Lee, and here are the tropes associated with this genre. Some of these will be explored, and others we can choose not to. Once we got our cast together, then we did the lines and veils. We talked further about tone and expectation. And finally, we have content warnings on every podcast episode, every streamed episode that we do on SaltySweetGames, so that the audience can also have safety tools. So they kind of know what to expect, and if there's something there that they're not okay with, they always have the option to step away. It's just giving people, like, keeping people informed so that they can make decisions, right? And it doesn't stop there, because after a session we do decompression, right? We use stars and wishes. Stars are things from the session that you really liked and you want to highlight, and wishes are things or scenes or interactions that you want to have come up in an upcoming session. So
that's cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you believe it or not, I've had GMs who have had problems with stars and wishes, which is hilarious. That did not end well, that campaign, because, you know, people felt like they weren't being heard, and that it didn't matter what they wanted because the GM was just going to do whatever he wanted, right? So safety tools, I think, are essential, absolutely essential in making your game as positive an experience as can be. I mean, even during play, like, a lot of people get very passionate about immersion, especially in streamed content, but I will always prefer, like, using something like the X, N, and O cards to communicate rather than the immersion. I mean, Zoom, we mostly use Zoom, is great because you can private message, like X if you need something removed from the game, N if you just rather not go into any more details, or O for like, okay, I'm having a great time, let's go.
Okay, cool.
Like, I will always take meta talk, stepping out of character, over immersion, because I care way more about the player, you know, than some false sense of immersion.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, you know, that this entire last few minutes is so crucial, because I know that there are definitely a lot of folks who are out there and they're running games and they kind of just go, you know what? There's not a place for any of this at the table, and that's absolutely fine. And, you know, no problem with that at all. But, you know, even sort of the themes that you were discussing, right? Even taking a lens and looking at misogyny and things like that through TTRPG can be such a great way of, one, bringing awareness, two, it can almost be a catharsis, right? It's almost like the rewritten endings of tragedies. It can be a catharsis, it can be a way to deal with it, but I think it's so important that you do it the right way. And usually it's really hard to answer that question when somebody goes, well, what's the right way? And, well, listeners, that's the right way. Yeah. You just heard the right way.
Rewind,
like, that's
listen
the way.
to it again.
Because you know, so much of that is things where, yeah, for a lot of folks, it might be, you know, common sense that, oh, I should check with somebody before. But in reality, especially when we're talking about role playing, some people, they take the separation a little too literally, and they don't make the space to have it stated what is comfortable and what is not comfortable, because, well, yes, we're all playing characters, and yes, it's a fantasy or it's something that is outside of us. We are still the people there, and we all have our own things that go on in our own life. And I liked what you said about it being a living document, because, that's something I haven't really heard before either. And it makes so much sense, because life is continuing to happen, and things may come up during the course of a campaign. And it's very important, I think, to have that ability to still anonymously, so that there is a level of comfort, be able to set those boundaries. So that is so cool.
Yeah, I'll say before this year, like, I didn't see a lot of people putting pandemics on their lines, but it is now. And that's fine. Like, of course, like, whatever we can do to make everybody comfortable, like, of course we're going to do that.
Exactly. And I really loved what you said about your, immersion is all well and good, but not at the cost of people. A story a story can be beautiful and wonderful, but people are real. Stories are stories.
Yeah, I had a couple of experiences. Like, streaming kind of takes this to another level, because you're also publicly performing, and as a woman, I often would feel like I couldn't express like what I needed to be comfortable, or I couldn't say no to something, right? Because I didn't want to look difficult or something like that. And it wasn't until I started playing with more and more folks of marginalized gender, like, that I started advocating for myself more strongly, which will definitely show you some sides to people you had not previously seen, but it is also why I'm such a strong advocate of safety tools.
Absolutely. And I know, I feel the same way a lot. Like, as a female presenting person, it sometimes feels there's this whole extra level of, expectation, or even sometimes like a lack of expectation, which is as infuriating. And it, I can't even imagine, especially navigating it live. So on top of that, you've got your players that you have to think about. You have yourself, of course, that you have to think about. And then you have a lot of added variables as well from, having to navigate it on the fly. And I know for me, sometimes I still, when I have to advocate for myself or when I have to set a boundary, I get incredibly anxious, like, oh, have I done something wrong? And I think that's something, for me that I really had to unlearn. Like, no, my safety and my comfort is paramount. And I hope if anybody out there needed to hear that you hear that.
Yes. Yeah. It's something where, I know for myself, like, I was streaming on Twitch for a while before I met Prime, and when Prime and I got together, we started building this platform together and creating all of our things. And my perspective as a cis white male is extremely narrow and extremely limited. And it wasn't until, seeing a lot of these things from not my own perspective, but from one that's very, 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 very close to me, it shows a lot of things that I had no idea were as pervasive or as...
The disparities in treatment, even with well-meaning folks, can be very loud.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Totally. Absolutely.
And so was it this kind of drive for, because you mentioned you had some maybe not great experiences, was it this drive to create a safe space for people to be able to explore things and be creative and create something together that made you want to first be a GM, or what was it that kind of made you go, you know what, I'm gonna run a campaign?
It was actually more like one of my GM's schedules was pretty changeable. So I, games would be called off last minute, and, people can call out of games when they need to, but I would so look forward to the session that I would be crushed when it happened. So what got me to finally run a game, and I didn't think when I first started that I ever would. I was like, oh no, I'll play. Was just the kind of recurring cancellation. So I was like, look, I'm just going to pick up a module, and it was Lost Mine of Phandelver. And I'm going to get my sister, my friend Rashada, and 2 of her friends who were a couple together. And we're going to go through this module. And we did. I think at the time, it was an older version of Lost Mine on Roll20, which has since been updated and revamped with all the fun things. So back then, I taught myself how to make my own maps, and I did them all wrong.
No.
But like, I put everything on the token layer. Huge mistake.
No.
Like, yeah, I taught myself. Back then, it was like Fog of War. And I made connections for the characters to stuff that was going on in the world. I even made my sister's character. She was like, just make me something. And I was like, okay. So I made her a paladin named Westra, and she had a cooking pot for a helmet and a big hammer, and she fell in love with her, and she's as hooked as I am when she actually gets the chance to play. So I really liked doing that for them because it was just my friends, you know, it was off stream. So it was just us, and I could kind of figure out what I needed to do to be able to prep. And I've really loved running modules, adjusting modules ever since. I like having that baseline, honestly. For something like D&D or Call of Cthulhu, whereas like other systems, I feel very confident in improvising whole campaigns, basically. Mm-hmm. Things like Urban Shadows really work well for something like that. So yeah, that was my first experience.
That is so cool. And again, the power of the internet is incredible. Yeah, so we also play with Arcad's brother. So it's the parallels, they're beautiful. And were you expecting the amount of work it went in, redoing maps notwithstanding?
Yeah, because now I know more what I need to do. It's easier than it was, though. I think with all of like production and social media and things like that I do for my streamed games, it's not necessarily less work, but I know what I need to get done, and I know how I work now. So in that way, it's become easier.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that. And obviously the preparation will differ a little bit in that way probably significantly, actually, now that I think about
yeah,
it.
Like for something like, I don't know if y'all caught this part, so I'll say it again. For something like D&D, I love running and adjusting modules. I always have. I like having the baseline to work for Call of Cthulhu as well, whereas other systems like Urban Shadows is really easy for me to create on the fly and improvise. That's one of the beauties of that game. Mm-hmm. But that's not like prepping for D&D or Call of Cthulhu for me. I like to have some things prepared.
Mm-hmm. Get into trouble if you don't.
Yeah, I do anyway.
I can understand that, definitely. I know I've only ever once tried to DM. I got one session in, and then it fell apart, as those things do. And but I was just flying by the seat of my pants, and thank goodness it didn't make it past session 1, because it would have been a tragedy about halfway through the second one, I think. But
with D&D, when I'm improving, I just default to cute goblins, and that distracts everybody for a while.
Oh,
I like that.
Goblins. Mm-hmm. Just gonna write that one down.
Yep. Just do the Stitch voice from Lilo and Stitch.
Oh, I love that.
That's genius.
And then they're all very distracted by that, so you have time to think.
I love it. So let's dig into that creative kind of process a little bit, or not the process so much, but the destination, let's call it. You've got so many ideas, obviously, that you love to create and to run with and to go with, whether it's a project, a module, a campaign, what have you. Do you have at this point in time a dream campaign or an ideal campaign? in terms of like the length of it, the story, the progression, the size and composition of the party? And do you have like a story rattling around in the back of your head that you really want to tell, but the moment hasn't been right yet?
Well, a lot of that I got to do really recently. I've been running 3 games for a while now.
Simultaneously?
That have kind of, yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm impressed.
Oh, yeah. So those 3 have all kind of scratched the itch I've been wanting. Like, I wanted a long-term pulp game that just kind of goes and goes and goes until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been Masks of Nyarlathotep that I run every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific on SaltySweetGames on Twitch. I think we're at like, 60 or almost at 60 episodes, and we've been playing for about a year.
That's amazing.
For streamed games, though, I will tell you, never more than 4 players unless someone's like a guest, and never more than 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
I used to do 3-hour streams, and I do it for like special occasions. Like, we have a guest GM right now on the channel, very, very awesome. Her name's Vanna, amazing role player and creator. And she's running Good Society for us for our new series that we're doing. And those sessions are 3 hours because we're only doing 3 of them.
Right.
So that works out.
But
For something that is long term, no more than 2 hours, I swear. Like, it's just ideal for me because it's more like a movie, right? Than like binging a TV show, which every 4 hours, like 4-hour episode of a game feels like.
Mm-hmm.
I would, for streamed games that are recurring, 2 hours is amazing. Just trust me. It's way more digestible and just about what I can take, honestly. Like, with everything that goes into a stream game too, like, you got to think about it like you're getting ready, you're setting up, Streamlabs, you're doing your social media, like you're getting everything, you're getting your captions set up. So all that is happening, and then you have to play the game,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you have to do your intros, your outros. Like, by the time we finish a 2-hour session, it's really been like 3.5 hours of work.
Absolutely.
So that is why I love them. So that's for recurring streamed games. For podcasts, I like to have a set kind of number of episodes. So for Missing Annie Lee, our Fear Itself podcast, we were running, what was our spiel? Oh God, it's actually been over for a little bit. I almost forgot. We had 2 GMs and there were 2 arcs, right? And one took place in 2008, one took place in 2018, and they had some of the same characters. So we recorded all of the 2008 episodes, and then we recorded all of the 2018 episodes, and then we worked on editing and releasing them. It would go 2008, then 2018, then 2008, then 2018. So they all kind of beautifully crisscrossed with each other. But for podcast episodes, for like actual plays, I like to have something set, something that's doable for everybody. I would say between 8 and 12 episodes for an arc or for a season is ideal for me. And I like my podcast episodes to be an hour or less.
Very nice.
Yeah. It was amazing because my co-GM Summer was also the editor, and our sessions recorded, each episode was about an hour and a half, sometimes a little longer for the finales. But when we were editing, it was very edited. Like, we wanted it to be a really strong combination of actual play and audio drama. So it was just astounding how much stuff we could get rid of in every single episode, even our finales. came in under an hour, and I will never go back. I will never go back.
That's incredible. And thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. I know it, like, even for Arcad and I, I'd started streaming on YouNow around, I think, 2015, 2016. And he'd started streaming on Twitch around the same time. Yeah. And I remember there was a point kind of when we were both still working outside of the home, and, we were always tired from work, and then we also had stream, but then we're each other's best friends, so we also want to hang out and play games, and we have dogs and blah blah blah. And I remember it got to a point for us where we were seriously thinking to ourselves, oh, well, maybe we just can't stream anymore. We'd been very much conditioned and told by people, well, if you can't do 4 hours, then, what's the point, sort of thing. And we just got very sad because we love Twitch and we love our community, but we very much were feeling so burnt out, like something had to go. And I remember just saying, well, why don't we just do an hour? Why don't we just do 2? And Arcad was like, well, we can't do that. And I was like, of course we can. We can. And if people don't like it, that's fine. But, it's either give up something that we have a passion for, or it's break some arbitrary rules. And yes, break the arbitrary rules.
Break them. Shatter them.
Goodness. It's so good to hear it, though, coming from a third party. It's like, yes, y'all.
And it's funny because I sing a totally different tune for home games. Because home games have always been rarer for me, just because of scheduling and things like that. I like really long home games. My girlfriend and I so the duet game I ran for her was a kind of modded Curse of Strahd for D&D 5e, and we would play like 4 hours a night, and we would play sometimes quite often in the week because we had the time, and because it was just us and it was at home, I could get up and get a snack whenever I wanted, and I didn't feel the need to like dress up and do my makeup, and like we could just set up how we wanted. So that level of just comfort made it so I was like, yes, I want to play for 4 to 5 hours as often as we can. So yeah, my home games have tended to run longer.
I think that makes so much sense, though. I know for me personally, it's such a different thing versus just, like Arcad and I, we play a ton of games on stream, and it's a great time and we love it and it's awesome. But 3 hours of X game on stream always feels like 6 hours of that same game off stream. And it's just because, you as entertainers, you want to make people laugh. You want to make people have a good time. You want to make sure that, and I know for me, Twitch helped me so much when I was feeling so incredibly lonely. And so for me, it's every person in chat is a person who I want to connect with and who I want to talk to and who I want to, make sure they're okay and make sure they're having a good time. And that's all great, but it's draining.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So much excess energy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And it must have been nice. Did you find that having that experience with your girlfriend and having that at home and having it just kind of be the two of you getting to be together and do this thing that you both love, but without any of those sort of outside expectations or even just needing to be on, was that almost like a palate cleanser? Like, did it bring like so much more love back to on stream, or did it make stream harder? How did that play out?
A palate cleanser. That is like 100% what it felt like. Just having it just be the two of us and knowing that I was just playing with someone who, wasn't gonna judge me, someone who I could just like break character and talk to, or to like go over and hug if there was an emotional moment, and go get a snack too while we're at it. It was so refreshing. I felt such a kind of freedom with it being private. And we would like share stories from it. But just the fact that no rando on Twitter is gonna argue with me about how I ruled something, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we'll decide. Like, I'll make a call after we talk about it if there's disagreement on it. And it's just us, and it's totally like comfortable and safe. And, you know, it's still a horror campaign, and it's a big emotions campaign. And she got to experience all of that. And while at the same time, it was super safe for her. It doesn't mean that, you know, stuff didn't ever come up. We still used safety tools in our home game. You know, we've been together for 3 years and we still use safety tools because they work and they're good. Yeah, but having that just be between the two of us, yeah, it definitely reignited a bit of the passion for it, because especially when it's your work and it's your, you know, your hobby, depending how you approach streaming TTRPGs, it can start to feel a bit you can get burnt out very easily on it, because it's asking a lot of you to kind of do those kinds of streams for an audience. So I mean, we're still going. She's running one for me now, and I'm planning our kind of Ravenloft sequel. So yeah, it's been great. It's been great to roll real dice.
That honestly just all sounds beautiful. It never even occurred to me we could just do a game together.
Yeah, that's wild.
All this time,
just do a game together.
All this time we spent, like, we'll spend hours just cut together on the couch, just, you know, theory crafting characters. We could play. Oh, you've opened up a whole new world.
You have. You really have.
Like, I think, you know, people talk about how Curse of Strahd is, you know, it can be a party killer, like certain areas of it, and it's like, yeah, well, you can adjust on the fly, or you can adjust beforehand. I was using a lot of people talk about Mandy Mod, who made a couple of adjustments to some of the encounters, making it a little more balanced. I ran a few more NPCs and kind of buffed them a little bit, and that's it. It was so easy, and it was, I think, I'm positive both Allie and myself would say it is our far and away favorite tabletop experience that we've had.
That's incredible.
That's so good. One quick little question about it. What characters are you both playing in it? Or were you both playing
okay. In it? Yeah. So the character she created was named Sophia, and she was let's see, she ended up multi-classing. She was a celestial patron warlock who ended up multi-classing into sorcerer. Was it divine soul sorcerer? Maybe. I think it was. And, you know, she didn't know who her patron was. She had just kind of heard this voice, this very comforting voice. And when she and her companion, Avi, who's let's see, half elf? Yeah, she was a half elf monster hunter ranger, got pulled into the mists. Sophia started seeing all these connections she had to Barovia, and eventually to the big bad himself. So I got to finally play the NPCs I'd always loved, like Strahd, like Irina, who we kind of changed up her stat block to make her kind of more of a swashbuckly type, so she could hold her own in combat. Got to play Esmeralda and Dr. Van Richten, and it's funny because that was Curse of Strahd was the first game I played, the one on Roll20. It was the first game I was ever a player in, and it was an interesting experience. It was my first game, right? So there were a couple of red flags that maybe I didn't see. But coming back to it and getting to run kind of the, at least for us, like the ideal Curse of Strahd experience was really powerful, because I love that story. It's very near and dear to my heart, and I got to share it with the woman I love, and she and her character and Irina ended up together, and they got married right before the final fight, and it was like
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
That's
We got to
incredible.
tell the story that we wanted, which was awesome.
I love that.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
You ready for a game?
I think so.
Excellent.
Okay.
Just a little bit of hostage improv.
Just a tiny
Just
bit.
a tiny bit. All right. So this one is called Explain It in an Elevator, where you have 1 minute to explain your campaign or your favorite campaign to a stranger in an elevator who has never heard of TTRPGs. Arcad will start the timer. We will count you in, and then the floor is yours. Are you ready?
I think so. Hold on. I
Yes.
took a sip of root beer and I was like, oh no. Okay.
I believe in you.
Perfect.
Also, root beer, delicious.
Marvelous.
All right,
Yes.
Arcad, have you got the timer?
I've got the timer. You ready for the count-in?
Yes.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so you know that movie The Mummy. This is the vibe we're going for. It's the 1920s, and all over the world, weird things are happening. Like there are cults, and they are trying to open a gate for their weird god to come through. But don't worry, these 4 silly bastards are about to stop them. We've got the former football player / little baby journalist. We've got the secret mom / art forger, who may have connections to the mob. We've got the adventure scientist who has a very torrid love life, and we have the playboy psychic. Okay, these 4, because the cults murdered their friend, they're gonna save the world. It sounds weird, but they're gonna do it. The end.
That was, and literally, there we go.
Perfection.
Literally perfect timing.
I'm sold. Where can I buy the book? Is there going to be a screen adaptation?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
in. That's amazing.
That was beautiful.
It's one of our favorite things, honestly, that little mini game, just because we get such a wide range of ways people tackle it. It's spectacular.
Yeah. The other day, Arcad said to me, "Do you think we should change the question and make more direct?" I was like, "Absolutely not. There's too many great answers that come from it."
The ambiguity is the best part, for sure.
And so, for you, what is something that you would want folks to know about other systems and other games, or just about TTRPGs in general, outside of D&D?
Yeah, let's say that person in the elevator was like, "Oh, I'm intrigued. Here, explain this to me further."
Yes. So what I'd say is there are so many systems that will do what you want better than D&D. D&D is great for what it is. Obviously I play a lot of D&D, but I would say, like what I was just saying, if you want to play The Mummy or something like The Mummy, Pulp Cthulhu is going to do that better than D&D will. If you want to play Twin Peaks, Fear Itself, like if that's the experience you want, I guarantee you Fear Itself. If you want to play something like Buffy, right? Monster of the Week is where you want to go. That's the same answer if you want to play something like the X-Files. So like there are so many systems out there that are just waiting for you to give you the best experience. And so it's worth digging around, it's worth learning, because the better the system meshes with the experience you want, the better time you're going to have.
That makes sense. No, like trying to jam a what's that saying? The square peg into the round hole.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, though. Yeah.
And I love that. I think that, part of it is, I know for me, one of the reasons I was so excited when I came across your profile was I was like, wait, hold on. There's more. Like for me, I kind of got introduced to D&D when I was in high school, in the sense of there was a book and it got opened once, and then we sat around in the band room and we verbally just told a story. And then sometimes one of the people would go, well, no, you can't do that. And we go, oh, okay. And then we'd figure something else out. And then kind of coming back to it in adulthood and kind of learning what it was and what it could be and all of the potential, that was amazing. And now there's like, okay, wait, that was the TARDIS. I've opened the door. There's so much more. And it's just, I think it's so cool to get to learn that and hear, hey, there's this really cool thing and there's a ton of freedom to it and it's very freeform. And guess what? There are other systems like it that are entirely freeform or, entirely could be the exact same thing, but could be better for a story that you're trying to tell or an experience you're trying to have. And that is just so cool.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
I love that.
So with all the stuff that you've, been doing across different games, across different experiences, at home, offline, as part of a show, what stands out to you as the weirdest, strangest, most interesting character that someone has brought to the table in one of your games, whether you were the
or that you brought to the table,
or that
honestly,
you brought
yeah.
to the table, as a whether it was the table you were being the game master for, or that you were just playing in, what one stands out to you when you think about that?
So the Roll20 exclusive game system, Burn Bright, is great for this kind of thing because there are no humans in it. It's science fantasy in this galaxy called Olaxis, and all of our characters were like, if we were playing D&D, I would call them meme builds, right?
Sure.
But in Burn Bright, they were just characters, and it's a great system. Everyone should check it out. But my character I made She-Ra, but she was made of crystal.
Ooh.
She was just all crystal, and she had a very thick Russian accent, and she was very strong. And she also could turn her whole body into a source of heat and burn people. It was amazing. Another friend, B, played this character who was the captain of the ship, and they were basically 10,000 bugs in the shape of a wallaby. That was the character.
That is perfection.
We named the ship after their character. Our ship was called the Wicked Wallaby.
Wow.
And Jess, my friend Jess, their character was basically like a floating jellyfish with feathers who was also a medic and a scientist.
That's
and yeah, and Sam, our final player, Sam, they were a cat with snake eyes and a 3-piece suit.
That sounds like the funnest group ever.
It was, yeah.
I'm in love with that idea. I think maybe Prime mentioned it when we first reached out, but when we were looking through and reading up on these games that are part of your repertoire, I'd never heard about any, I don't think any of them before. But when I read the description online for Burn Bright, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. That was the one that I just find so fascinating. I think I just love playing really alien characters in games, and that's enormously appealing to me.
Yeah.
That game is really wonderful. The dice, it uses how do you describe it? So your different skills have different die types. So if you're really good at something, you'll have a D12 in it. If you're not so good at something, you'll have a D4, and you roll a certain amount based on the difficulty, and if you get no doubles, you pass, and if you get doubles, you fail. So it's kind of, and they even chart out the probability of it. So obviously if you have a bigger die, you'll have more of a chance to succeed. They map it all out for you, and it dice rolling is really fun in that, because it's especially in combat, because every action you do in combat gets increasingly difficult. So it almost feels like you're gambling when you roll the dice. It's very fun. It's a very fun system.
Oh, that sounds excellent. And it sounds almost like very high risk, high reward, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
And so when you're playing in those sort of systems where it's kind of, it seems sort of a callback to a second ago where we were talking about certain systems will support an idea better. I love that, because sometimes with D&D, I feel like I'm fighting to get my weird character out of a box. And they're like, no, they can't quite do that. And I'm like, but yes, but why? But why not? But why can't we just say they can? And it's like, no. And I don't know. Burn Bright sounds like it wouldn't say as many no's to me, but
Definitely not.
But so I need to know though, do you have, like, as a game master for, D&D or for any of the other ones, do you have any hard no's for character creation, or have there ever been, any classes or subclasses that you found either broke the game or made it not fun?
I'm the one usually breaking the game.
Nice.
Honestly, like, don't, if you let me be a bard or a rogue, I'm probably going to break something. And I enjoy that about myself. Hard no's for me are usually only if it's like a matter of balance. So for Pulp Cthulhu, it's like one psychic. You get one person who can be psychic. Don't add any more. I think it's the same for Fear itself, unless you're doing something really specific. And I always abide by that. Because I think it's a good call, because I think otherwise you get kind of out of the realm of balance on one hand, and maybe out of the realm of the kind of stories that the game supports. So only really if it's... Yeah, I can't think of anything else I've ever been like, absolutely not. I tried to tell somebody not to pick a class... not a class, a playbook for an Urban Shadows game once, but they were very passionate about it. So I was like, okay. And then they were very confused because it was a complicated playbook, but we worked with it.
Yeah, you figured it out.
Yeah.
I like it. And this is something, especially with your perspective on... perspective and experience with dealing with, so many different folks. Oh, actually, really quick before I jump into this next question, have you mostly played with people you've known, or have you often played with like complete strangers or like friends of a friend kind of thing?
Yeah, I have done both. So the first group I ever had were complete strangers. So was the second group. I got to play with a couple of grad school friends and my sister. Nowadays it tends to be people I know, or people who at least a friend of mine knows, because I think that should be more normalized. Like, I don't, in terms of getting told who's going to be in the game and being able to, like, ask about, like, if anybody knows them. So usually it's with acquaintances, at least nowadays, unless I am working professionally, in which case I tend to have more strangers.
Sure.
Though usually someone ends up being a Twitter mutual.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I definitely prefer at least people who are acquaintances nowadays.
Gotcha.
Makes sense.
Okay. And so using that and leading into the next sort of thing, when you're handling your campaigns, especially from a DM perspective, how do you deal with conflicts or disagreements between players, whether it's like, well, especially if it's right in the moment of the campaign? And I'm also curious how your answer differs for a broadcast element, if it's something that's for entertainment rather than just like a game for the sake of the game.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts? Just sort of, what are your thoughts on that across the board?
Yeah, I would never try to settle it like in character or in game. I would always press pause, and like, if we need to go to a break screen on air, we'll go to a break screen. And if we can't resolve it in a timely manner, we'll call it for the night. I think that's fine. I think you have to be fine with that, because I think pretending like everything's okay is more damaging to the relationship than just pausing or stopping for the evening. Yeah, I mean, I think my main thing would be to take it out of the game, like, and have a sense of like privacy between like folks who were involved, so it doesn't like feel like it's on display for people. I think that's important as well. In terms of like, I mean, it's always a case by case thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think as the GM, if it's like a rules thing, obviously that's a bit easier to like make a decision on usually. But yeah, I would just say to step out of the game because it's not about the game.
No, very rarely anyways.
Mm-hmm. Very fair.
Yeah.
Very fair. And so as somebody who's at this point, very experienced in TTRPGs, and really it sounds like, for the first 2 campaigns to be with strangers, like putting yourself out there and sort of, when you were finding your way into this community, what advice would you give new players to be mindful of, or just what would you think that new players should know about the TTRPG community in general?
I think for things to be mindful of, it's, for me, I want to play with people who we don't have to agree on everything, but like I need to know that like people are going to respect each other's pronouns, that people are going to respect the safety tools, that it is, LGBT plus friendly, that it's diverse. Like those are things that it's something that just needs to be asked. I mean, this is something like I would say if I'm looking at someone I'm going to play with or a group I'm playing with, those are the kinds of things I'm looking for, because especially for streaming, right? When you put something on the internet, it is no longer a home game. It is no longer like just a game with friends. It can be those things, but it's also content.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are added responsibilities with that new folks should be aware of. The best experiences I've had are with people who were doing those things that I described. I just knew that those spaces were going to be safe for me to just like exist in.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kinds of things I would look for. I would look for, like if safety tools are going to be used. And a lot of the times you can see this, like if you're applying through a Google form or you're watching a stream that maybe you'd like to be part of, like you can see folks who are, I think you can see folks, inclusivity. You can see people's values there, and it's not to say like you only play with people who agree with you, but
you got to have at least some core beliefs in common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely for me. Like, yeah, absolutely.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, I know for me, it's like, yeah, we're all human and sometimes we make mistakes and sometimes we need to grow. And the thing, exactly what you were saying, when it's out there and when it's on the internet, it isn't just a home game anymore. It's content, and further than content, it sort of sets a standard, right? And so if, I was talking recently about how I think it's very important for content creators to take a stand against things like toxic companies, because if, an average, say 16 to 20-year-old, like thinking about myself at that age watching YouTube, if I see a creator that I respect and I look up to not addressing something or letting something slide that is harmful or toxic, back then I didn't have the tools or the words to be able to recognize some of those things. And it's like, even, casual racism or casual sexism, it would obviously cause discomfort. But when you see people normalizing it and when you see it happening and not being addressed, and again, it comes back to the safety tools, when you see somebody kind of having a disregard for mental health and safety, I think it definitely makes a statement. And, not all of us are perfect. And I think that it's important to make sure that we do try and be as respectful as possible, but it has to be, I think, something that you go into with a goal of inclusivity. And I think it is very telling, the folks that don't have that mindset. And I think that honestly, that is what leads to so many of those horror stories on Reddit. And you're kind of thinking, oh my goodness, well, like, well, this situation is terrible. Like, why would this person think this was acceptable? And often the answer is because nobody has called them on it. And it's just very important, I think, to set those boundaries.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your journey in all of this really started, like 5-ish years ago. What is it about it? What is it about TTRPGs, GMing, and this whole experience, this whole everything that has just captured your interest and your passion so strongly? Like, not only, you've taken things a step further than a lot. Like, there's so many people who we talk to on a regular basis nowadays who, D&D and other TTRPGs are their life. They love them. They're obsessed with them every moment of every day. You've taken that one step further. It's your job, and it's your passion, and it's your hobby, and all these things. What changed, and why has it held on to you so strongly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been through a lot of creative fields. I started in theater and then moved to a film production and then ended up here. And I think it meshed together a lot of what I found myself craving, in terms of being able to help tell the story while also, getting to be a character in it. It was so much more imagination based. So, just because of my, voice type or body type, I, could maybe not get certain parts in the theater, right? And film production is expensive. And it kind of took those barriers away, right? I could play any character I wanted, didn't matter what I looked like or even sounded like. It was just whatever I wanted to do, and that was very freeing for me. It also gave me a lot of confidence because of that. I think before I met my girlfriend doing tabletop, I had been pretty introverted and kind of lacking in self-esteem for a long time before I started playing this, and just realizing that I was good at it, which is you don't necessarily have to be good at something you do as a hobby, but I was very passionate about it, and I took a lot of pride in feeling like I was good at it, whether it was knowing how to kind of game the system or if it was coming up with really compelling characters and role playing them well. I felt a sense of accomplishment, and that built up my confidence to actually pursue my girlfriend and actually put myself out there as a performer and a producer, and it just gave me that boost to be able to say I'm good at this, and I can do all of this. And yeah, a lot of self-worth, I think, wrapped into it, which, especially when it becomes part of your day job, can start to be kind of iffy territory. So I try to make sure that I'm into other things as well. But yeah, it just completely changed how I thought about myself, and that was really meaningful.
I love that. That is incredible. And it's such a testament, I think, that something can have so much of an impact. Even from your story, we filmed another podcast, or I guess recorded another podcast earlier today. And even in that one, it was this idea of, it gave me the space to feel more confident and to learn, more soft social skills. And I know for me, TTRPGs, our last campaign was a whole ability, essentially, and a platform for me to explore my gender identity in a way that had never been possible before. And it is so incredible to me that D&D and TTRPGs, it is truly, the limit is your imagination, and they can be whatever you need them to be with the right people and with the right story, and that's just beautiful.
It really is. With one last sort of touch onto these the TTRPGs aside from D&D, there's such a you know what, I'm going to call a spade. There's a fuss made about alignments a lot of time, and then there's been a lot of discussion recently, I know, especially in like the D&D ecosystem, about alignments. Do alignments have as much of a factor, as much of a place in these other systems, like using the Call of Cthulhu, for example? I imagine because of the horror slant on everything, does it make that more ambiguous or more rigid, or does it affect it at all?
Yeah, I think it's the absence of it probably makes like NPCs at least a little more fluid. There's a fantastic NPC named Zara in Masks of Nyarlathotep, and it talks about how she can kind of be whatever the keeper needs her to be. Like, she's working for a goal, but you can use her how you want. And I made her kind of a surprise ally than anything. And I think not, having it be like, and Zara's evil. It's like, oh, okay, well, she's a cultist, like, but come on, give me something else. I think alignment can be a good shorthand. I think motivations. Urban Shadows uses drives for their NPC creation. I think drives are really great shorthand. Like, they can just be a phrase, like, what are they after? And that can, I think, sometimes be more useful and more evocative than alignment necessarily.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it gives there's reason for it, like alignment. It seems kind of like a lot of the time in the Dungeons and Dragons context anyways, where it's like, okay, my character is this, and therefore I have to do this, as opposed to my character has had these experiences and this stuff happening in their life, and therefore they are more likely to do this, but they're also going to grow and evolve and change too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think, like, even in Curse of Strahd, it was like, oh, if, someone's lawful good, they can pass through this. I was like, what? No, that's ridiculous. That is arbitrary. And like, how? No, get out of here. No, absolutely not. I love like 99% of that module. That little stipulation is not one of the things I love.
No.
That's very fair. That's very fair. Wow. We do have an alignment personality quiz, actually.
Gimme.
Yeah? All right. I will say, one of my favorite things about it so far has been, well, you know what? No. After.
After.
Okay, so earlier today, we sent you a list of some quotes. Was there one or more of those that spoke to you more than any others?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you roll for it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's very me. I often, like, I can turn up the drama as a GM, but I'm actually, I find myself as a player more like kind of sitting forward in my seat and like performing. As a GM, I'm very chill, like very kind of laid back in my chair and just willing to let folks try, and like willing to give them feedback if they want to, like, oh yeah, you can do that. Now it is gonna probably be a very deadly encounter, or it is a high DC, but of course you can roll for it. I a lot of the time I call myself a facilitator. Not, I'm facilitating everyone's fun. I'm facilitating the story and everything like that, not just for the other players, but for myself too. And yeah, I think I'll let you roll for it is very much my attitude. Like a little shrug with that, like, yeah, sure, go for it.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, according to this alignment chart, and of course, feel free to dispute, that's the most important part, is true neutral. And it says, Neutral is a hard balance to strike. It's not perfection, as everyone's technique is personal. Perfect is what's right for you. But a neutral DM finds a path between permissive, strict, threat, and reward that usually appeals to everyone. The generalized approach draws from tips and tricks from lots of practice and playing multiple systems across a long gaming history.
I completely agree with that, actually.
Right? I think that was perfect.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was kind of perfect how it was like, yeah, the alignments are fine, but they're not as good as again, a motivation. And then it was literally true neutral, kind of the most, non-alignment of all the alignments. It's beautiful.
It's amazing. Is that when you make characters, do you kind of do you go all over the when it's necessary anyways? Do you go all over the alignment chart?
I think I have played some kind of more neutral, but for the most part, I've actually been neutral good. Most of the characters I play tend to be neutral good. I don't know. Those were the kind of characters I liked making, like these kind of, I called them not because they were chipper, but like rays of sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of their personality, but because of their actions.
Right.
Like they were trying to do good for good's sake.
Yeah. Heroes.
Yeah. In D&D, those are the kinds of characters I played for a long, long time.
Nice.
Excellent.
I always kind of wonder about that. I know for myself, when I was younger anyways, I thought true neutral was, the pinnacle. I thought that's where I always wanted to be sitting. And then as I've aged and as I've thought more about characters and myself, and especially with my current character who is very, very heavily based on myself, right? It's very.
And he's the best.
He's
great.
You're biased.
Untrue.
But I'm
not married to you in that campaign. I don't know what you're talking about.
Fair point. But I find as I've aged, I've definitely leaned way more into chaotic good. Has been sort of my comfort zone lately.
Yeah, that's my girlfriend. My girlfriend's chaotic good. Even though she thinks she's chaotic neutral, she's chaotic good.
Yeah.
You just described me directly.
Yes.
I am tagged in this, and
Yes.
But I find it's been the same for me. I think for a long time I was like, oh well, I don't want to play, like a mean character. I don't want to play, a character that's going to derail things. And then as I got older, I was like, okay, well, I don't have to do those things to be, even an evil character doesn't need to be rude. They don't need to be mean. They don't need to be mean-spirited or toxic. Like you can create an evil character with motivations and with a backstory that has no, negative implications on your party, say. And so it's been nice getting to realize that instead of all of the kind of archetypes that folks like to, I feel arbitrarily give to the alignments, and then to take that a step further, to use that as a justification for being kind of an ass. It's like, no, it actually doesn't need to be done that way.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And then usually we wrap it up with a question for the listeners, but I think that it should be a question for you and for the listeners, just based on, again, all of the incredible just thoughts and just everything that you have. And so I want to know, what are your thoughts on inclusion? I mean, we've dug into it a little bit, but kind of broader, what are your thoughts on inclusion and diversity in the TTRPG space that you think people need to hear? And for the listeners, the same question, but also what examples of inclusion and diversity in the TTRPG space have you seen that have made your heart glow?
Those are great questions, especially as a content creator. Inclusion and diversity is never an afterthought. It is right at the top of your priorities. It's also just an incredibly positive thing to interact with people who don't have the exact same experience as you, but you mutually respect one another. I think it is absolutely essential because, like I said, when you're streaming, right, it is not your home game. You're not just a bunch of friends. You are putting art out there in a way, and art matters, and representation in art matters, and you don't know who out there you could make feel seen. For me, the only other experience I'd had with D&D before I watched Critical Role, which admittedly is just a bunch of white folks, but there were women playing.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, I had never, all the games I had seen, like I was dating a guy at the time who played D&D, but it was all guys, and I was very clearly not invited, right? So seeing someone like you playing a game and doing the thing that you love can literally change a life. So diversity always at the forefront, and then making sure the people that you ask to your table are included and safe is right there with it. It's just, yeah, it's it's so important.
Oh, well, that is our last question. And Lauren, thank you again so much. This has been incredible, and truly, if you had a good time, please let us know if you and your girlfriend would like to do a double date D&D TTRPG episode with us, because that would be absolutely excellent.
That would be so fun.
Oh, heck yeah. I had a great time. This was a lovely chat.
Oh, good.
Thank you. And I will now give the floor to you. Let us know. Obviously, you have so many incredible and wonderful things going on. And yeah, give the floor. Tell the folks where to find everything, where to find you. Yeah.
I am Lauren. I'm ThatSaltyGinger over on Twitter, and half of SaltySweetGames on Twitch, where I stream tabletop role-playing games and horror video games with my best friend Kiana. Other places you can find me. So every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific on our Twitch channel, SaltySweetGames, I am the keeper of Masks of Nyarlathotep. We are coming back at the end of August. Heading to Australia with a new player, which is really exciting. I think that's going to be great. Every other Sunday on our channel, we'll be playing some mini campaigns of indie tabletop role-playing games. Right now we're doing Good Society, which is exciting. That's noon every other Sunday. And what else? Oh, Missing Annie Lee, the podcast, the Fear Itself podcast I worked on for over a year. Can be found everywhere podcasts are found. That is Missing Annie Lee. Make sure you check the content warnings, because you are going to have an emotional and horrific journey. It's the best.
That's incredible. And we will put all of those links in the description for this episode. Well, Lauren, thank you again. I think that's the most beautiful place to end it off. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Romantic Dinner with the DM. We are so excited to have you on our journey as we learn about the worlds and stories created by dungeon masters and game masters in this wonderful, wonderful medium of TTRPGs.
We've got new episodes coming out weekly, and if you're jonesing for new content in between, check out our YouTube.
Link below.
And follow us on twitch.tv/Arcad and Prime.
We'll see you next week, and really hope that you enjoyed the episode. Bye.